Welcome to The Shoreline, brought to you by Shores and Islands, Ohio, the Midwest's hottest vacation destination. Hello, my name is Jill Bauer. I am the PR manager for Shores and Islands, Ohio, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Dayton Barnett, who is our social media manager. Dayton and I are here to give you the inside scoop on everything happening here in our island and coastal communities and the events and attractions we think you'll want to know more about and hopefully visit. Hi, Dayton.
What's up? What's up?
How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
You know what? I'm not going to lie. I am a little tired. And I'm a little slap happy. It's after lunch.
I should be honest too. I am too.
We are recording after lunch. And what the listener doesn't know is that Dayton is an amazing baker. And he brought in some cookies today. And while I didn't need it, I ate an entire dash of Dayton cookie. And now I want to take a nap.
It'd be like that. I got one on the side right here next to me.
So Dayton, he's always out and about in the community. He's gathering content for our social channels where, of course, you should be following along and engaging with him, engaging with Shores and Islands. So what have you been up to recently, Dayton?
I have been really focused on year-round stuff. As we're, going into the summer, I've been really focused on kind of pulling back and showing how our region is a year-round destination. And a lot of that stuff included the indoor water parks. And right now I've been focused on the sports. I've been focused on sports. I've been hitting up Cedar Point Sports Force and Sports Center just to see some of those events that are going inside the Sports Center. Just the past weekend, I was at a volleyball tournament. It's so exciting. It's so many people. It's thousands of people coming in here in just a weekend, but this is like every weekend.
Yeah.
So I've just been focused on these year-round things. So the sports, the water parks, as well as, some of our partners, some of the businesses that are here and the activities that we can do that are here year-round.
That's actually a great segue to our guest today because it's one of our year-round businesses. Today we get to talk to one of our greatest supporters and one of the owners of a local small business which offers guided tours of the region. Back in 2019, under their former business, which you'll hear about that evolution shortly, they were awarded the first ever Shores and Islands Partner of the Year Award. Joining us on the Shoreline today is Dick Ries. Dick Ries and Jim Irvin own and operate Firelands Adventure Tours. They moved to Sandusky in 2017 and opened Sandusky Segway in downtown Sandusky. Sandusky Segway provided 1 and 2 hour guided tours of downtown Sandusky, right in their name, on Segways. Then in 2019, they added the boardwalk at Cedar Point and a second operation. In 2021, they expanded their business plan to use an 18-passenger, climate-controlled, ADA-compliant bus for their guided tours instead of Segways. And Firelands Adventure Tours was born. Welcome to the podcast, Dick.
Thanks, Jill, and Dayton. Thanks very much. I have to tell you, you're mentioning the Partner of the Year brings back memories. Jim, for those people who know Jim, he's seldom at a loss for words. And this was one time when we were announced as Partner of the Year that he was completely speechless. It was such an honor to be recognized for the Partner of the Year, being such a new organization in the Sandusky area, and it's one that we were very, very proud of.
Oh, that's so nice. And you guys were only a couple of years in at that point, but you were already doing great things for the community. And, we love, of course, that you've stuck around, even though your business plan has changed a little bit. But if we could, let's start back in 2017 and let's briefly talk about what brought you to Sandusky and why did you open a Segway tour business here?
Well, before we came to Sandusky, Jim was actually a part-time tour guide in a Segway business in Columbus. And he had, even earlier than that, considered opening his own Segway operation. But because he was working full-time and had other focus, he wasn't able to do that. So he worked part-time as a Segway guide in Columbus, loved it. That operation is still a vibrant operation that operates out of the convention center in downtown Columbus.
Oh, great.
But we had friends here in Sandusky who were participating in the renaissance of the downtown area, and they knew of Jim's focus on Segways. And so they said, why don't you come to Sandusky and open a Segway business? And so we came up a year prior to that, and we talked to many people. We talked to government officials about the idea of doing that. And our second stop was Shores and Islands, and we talked to people at Shores and Islands about it. And it seemed as though it was going to be a very good idea. And we felt that our focus could really be a positive factor in the downtown renaissance. And so you're right. So we did come up in 2017. We opened the Segway business, and the Segway business allowed us to do 1 and 2 hour guided tours of the historic locations in downtown Sandusky.
Which you guys weren't originally from here, right? So when you moved to the area, you had a lot to learn about the history and some of the stories.
We had a lot to learn.
That's amazing.
That was one of our biggest time expenditures was making sure that the information that we were providing on the tours was historically accurate, because we always felt that we wanted to be very, very true to the history of the area. It wasn't just entertainment. There was more than just entertainment. It was fun to ride on the Segway, don't get me wrong about that, but we wanted to make sure that we highlighted and spotlighted the importance of the historic community that is here in the Sandusky area. And then, as you mentioned, in 2019, we had the opportunity to also partner with Cedar Point. And again, what a historic, interesting background Cedar Point has. Yeah. And so we split our Segways. We had a total of 10 Segways. So we split between Cedar Point, which received 5, and 5 in downtown Sandusky. And we did historic tours along the boardwalk. And we came up, again, a lot of research to get our background information, some fun and exciting kinds of things that we discussed along the boardwalk as far as the history of Cedar Point. And then in 2021, what we decided to do was to expand our business plan. It was great. The things were going well as far as the work that we were doing in downtown Sandusky. We were housed in the State Theater, and because of the renovation of the theater, we needed to find a new home. And we looked in earnest downtown, but we weren't able to find anything that would fit the needs for the Segways. And so we were considering, we kind of came to a junction where we had the opportunity to either expand our business plan or to go back to Columbus. That was the other option.
Oh, and, I'm glad you didn't choose that.
Well, and again, one of the things that we did was we spent a lot of time in researching the kinds of things that were not only important for the historic perspective of downtown Sandusky, but things that would fill a need. And one of the things that I remember very distinctly was talking to Larry Fletcher, and who is the president of Shores and Islands, Ohio, and he said, and we presented him with the idea of doing bus tours, and he said, you know what? There's nothing that's going on like that, and that would be a real addition to the downtown area. And so what we did was we made the decision to expand the business plan, which had a lot of opportunities for us. With the Segways, we had to stay in the downtown area. We were just in and around the downtown area. But with a bus, the geographic possibilities were endless. Didn't have to stay just in the downtown area. And that meant that we could focus on even more of the topics that are important for people to know here in the Firelands area. And besides just the topics, we could have more guests as well. Instead of only having 4 guests at a time, either downtown or at Cedar Point, we could have up to 18. So we could do larger groups and more guests per tour. And here's one thing that sometimes people don't think about. You were outside in the elements on a Segway, and with a bus, weather was not a consideration. During the summer, I always remember that as we started to have storms in the afternoon, the phone would start ringing, and the tours that were scheduled would cancel. And so weather is no longer a consideration for the bus, because the bus can go at any weather, because we are a 12-month operation.
It makes you year round.
It makes us year-round, absolutely. So a lot of people have said that they really do appreciate having options during the cold or the winter months, or just when weather is inclement, because, it's not just strictly nice summer weather. And another thing that was really important to us was that we planned to have the bus ADA compliant. So if there are guests who are confined to a wheelchair or use walkers, they can use our bus. We do have a lift, so that was something that, again, was somewhat of a restriction on Segways. But with the bus,
Right.
Anybody can ride the bus, and that was one of the real key factors, I think, in our business plan, to make sure that everybody can ride the bus.
Right, all ages, right? I think there was age restrictions with the Segway. You had to be 14.
You had to be at least 14 years old, and that was not our restriction. That was a state restriction.
Right.
And so, yep, absolutely.
Now the whole family can participate. And
Exactly.
I mean, I even remember back when we had the Segway tour operation, of course, all ages and abilities were able to do it. You guys were top notch at teaching people how to balance and ride on the Segways. And we even did a tour with a very elderly travel writer at one point who had the time of his life. He really had the time of his life. I feel like he was in his 80s. Now,
Right.
Not everybody in their 80s is going to be willing to try that. I mean, we had young folks who were just afraid of, trying to balance.
Oh, yeah.
And
Right.
with this business model, you can really include everyone.
Everybody can ride the bus, and that's one of the really important factors. And again, highlighting the resources in and around the Firelands area. Now, again, we're sometimes even going outside of the Firelands area to participate in guided tours. We've gone all the way to Columbus for a tour. We have gone several times to Toledo for a tour in the Toledo area. So it expands with that expanded geographic region. We have more tour topics of greater interest. Weather-wise, we're 12 months, no problems, and everybody can ride. It's a great business plan.
Well, this young fellow is actually kind of upset. I never got to do the Segways.
Oh!
Yeah, you missed out. You moved here too late, Dayton.
Yeah, well, I think I moved here right when you guys were kind of transitioning. So I saw it, I seen this setup, I saw it inside of the State Theater, but I never got to do it, which would have been fun. But I have been on the bus, I think maybe 2 or 3 times. I don't know if you have, Joe, yet or not. But it was actually one of the first things I did when I started working for Shores and Islands. I remember coming into the office.
What a great
and,
introduction.
and we went on a guided tour. I'm pretty sure it might have been the Underground Railroad one, but I'm pretty sure one of the first things I did coming in here, my first 2 weeks, we did a guided tour. I just went with you guys.
I remember that. Yeah. I remember that you were the other staff that was on the tour introduced you as the new guy, and so we were happy. We were happy to have you.
Yeah. So, and in a guided tours. So, what exactly does that mean in terms of what you do during that session?
That's a really important point, Dayton, and again, a part of our business plan, because they are, in fact, guided tours. Sometimes people think, getting on a tour bus, you simply drive past locations and, people just point things out. We go into the history of the locations. We like to say that our tours are both immersive and substantive. Substantive from the standpoint that the information that people receive from the tours really illustrate the history. It's more than just entertainment. There's certainly a factor of entertainment in it, but we like to say that our tours are educational as well as instructive. And so substantive. The information is important. But here's the other thing. We like to say that besides being substantive, they're also immersive. So people are able to actually get out and stand where historical things happen. A good example of that is the Underground Railroad Tour, as a matter of fact, because during the Underground Railroad Tour, we offer the option of getting out 3 times during the tour to actually stand where freedom seekers once stood and hear the history and understand the importance of these various locations in the Sandusky area. So both of those are really important components. It's not just a drive-by with a point out. There's a lot of additional information. And the other thing that we worked really hard on is on many of our tours, we have booklets that go along with the tour. An example of that, and we'll talk about the kinds of tours in just a minute, but our wine tasting tours. Again, we couldn't go to wineries on Segways, but we certainly can on buses. Those guests who are on our wine tasting tours have a booklet that provides a lot of information about the history of winemaking in the Firelands area. It includes a glossary of information, a glossary of terms and information about wine tasting, because some of our guests would say things like, I've heard about this particular thing, but I really don't know what it means. And so we included a glossary. One of the fun things is fun facts about wine, and there's some really fun things in that section of the booklet about wine. But perhaps the most important one is a 5-step tasting platform that we have, and this allows people, we tell people, this allows you to drink better. Not necessarily more, but to drink better, because you're able to evaluate the wine on these 5 platform areas, and then summarize at the bottom of the platform. You're able to say, yeah, this is probably an 8 or a 9. This is really pretty good stuff. Yet others are, maybe rating something maybe a 2 or a 3. So you wouldn't be buying that again. So again, substantive from the fact that many people have information to take home with them to remember about their experience during their tours here in the area.
I got to get on that tour. I love wine. Honestly, the being in this region is why I honestly got into wine.
Oh, is that right? Oh, that's
yeah. I mean, having to stop at so many of the wineries. I think right now my favorite is probably Heinemann's over on Put-in Bay.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a long time winery that's been in business and very well known. Just to continue on that winery idea is that actually we do 2 wine tasting tours. The West tour is the wineries in Sandusky, and the East tour are the wineries in the Vermilion area. Cool. So you have an opportunity on both. And, people, and we only go to Lake Erie North Coast wineries. We've had requests for wine tasting at various wine stores in the area. But again, we're highlighting the Firelands area, the importance of the winery and wineries, and the importance that they have here in the Firelands area. So we only go to where wine is manufactured, sold in the Firelands area. And I'll tell you, Dayton, it's a lot of fun, because we go, on each one, we go to 3 wineries. So we go to 3 wineries on the west and 3 wineries on the east. You are able to taste their award-winning wines. And not only that, but you also have paired gourmet snacks. So that goes along with it. You're able to talk to either the winemakers or the managers who have background information about the winery, how long it's been there, the special awards that they've won, interesting facts. There's a lot of really interesting things as it relates to the wineries in this area. And then, whenever possible, we tour the production facilities or the vineyards. Now, that's when possible, because if they're bottling wine, it's too big of a liability
Right.
to have people in and around the machinery, or when they are working in harvest, or even like right now, they're doing a lot of prep as far as making ready for the ground and fertilizing and things like that. So safety is a huge consideration. But there are times when we're able to tour the production facilities as well as the wineries. It's a 4-hour tour. Each of them is a 4-hour tour, and we all have a great time. So, yeah, let me know when you want to go, and we'll get you
course.
signed up. How's that?
We're on
Yes.
board.
No,
Absolutely.
right, exactly.
And as you mentioned, you said you have some different types of tours. You got some regularly scheduled ones, some
Yeah.
seasonal ones, and even some pop-up ones. So can you give us some examples of those?
Sure, absolutely. We do have regularly scheduled tours. Those are tours which appear on our schedule. We work 7 days a week. We don't have tours 7 days a week, but there are tours available 7 days a week. For the regularly scheduled tours, well, of course, the wine tastings are regularly scheduled tours. So you can sign up for wine tours whenever you want. We have the Underground Railroad tour that we mentioned. That is available every day. And we do have a lighthouse tour. Although it's scheduled every day, it's really better in warmer weather when people are able to really get out and really experience the lighthouses. But it can be scheduled in the winter as well. Actually, some of the lighthouses are really quite spectacular in the winter. But yeah, that's a regularly scheduled tour. And then we have pop-up tours. Those are tours, very special topics, and we may do them once or twice. And of course, the biggest popular pop-up tour that's coming up is our solar eclipse adventure.
Yes. More about the solar eclipse. We've been talking about this almost every week on the podcast. And actually, just a couple weeks ago, we had a great episode. If you missed it, go back and listen with Kelly from the Sidney Froman Planetarium to get us all ready for it. So, yeah, tell us what you're doing for the eclipse.
Well, one of the things that we're doing is we're offering an alternative to the kinds of things that are going to be going on Jackson Street Pier, which are going to be, many days leading up to the eclipse. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be offering, as I said, an alternative, and we're going to be using one of our business partners in conjunction with it. And here's what we're offering. For the solar eclipse, we're first of all offering remote complimentary parking. So this is parking that is away from the downtown area. I know that some people coming into the area don't know their way around. They might be intimidated by the crowds that they're going to be in the downtown area. Mm-hmm. So we have agreed with one of our other business partners to have complimentary parking, and it's going to be south of downtown, which is actually convenient to where we will be going. Going to be offering transportation to one of our wineries, and it's going to be Winery out on Route 4, which is one of our business partners. Beautiful place, award-winning wines, unrestricted view, and so again, this is an all-inclusive tour. So the price includes flight of wine that each person will have if they are of at least 21 years of age, and
of course.
and then it will also include paired gourmet snacks. One of the things that people, I don't think about, and again, that we did our research on, and we were trying to figure out what was going to be important. Our tour leaves at 11:30. And so we're going to be transporting people to Winery, and we're going to be there around noon. Well, the eclipse isn't until 3 o'clock, and then we're going to then leave after the eclipse. So the tour is going to be about 4 hours. And I don't think a lot of times people think, what are we going to do during that 4 hours? Do we have to just stand around? So one of the things, of course, that we're offering is indoor reserved seating. That's where you're going to be able to have the flights of wine and the paired gourmet snacks. There's going to be musical entertainment throughout. And we'll also then have a commemorative souvenir booklet that, again, is one of our booklets that we've developed specifically for the Solar Eclipse Tour. And that has some very important, well, as we say in the introduction or in the foreword, it has some amazing and some amusing information about eclipses. And of course, the thing that we're really focused on as a really important key point for our solar eclipse tour is safety, especially the eye safety. And because of Shores and Islands, Ohio, the viewing glasses are available. That's something that we are providing to all of our guests, our viewing glasses, as well as the information as it relates to how to safely use them. And that's a big component of the booklet. And then transportation back, again, to that convenient location. So that's going to be a pop-up tour that's coming up, of course, on April 8th. And one of the interesting things is that our guests so far who have registered are all from out of town. So what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to present information about Sandusky that they may not know about and introduce them to at least one of our wineries and hopefully have them come back because of their positive experience that they're going to have.
That's what I was thinking. If they go on this, they're definitely going to want to come back for a full wine tour.
Absolutely. I'm sure that we will, and we'll do our best to make that happen.
I was just going to say, can you also talk about your seasonal tours that you might do like during the holidays and at Halloween time?
Yep, absolutely. Seasonal tours are some of our best and our most fun tours. One of the things that we're going to be doing that we've done for the past 2 years is during the month of October, we sponsor Haunted Sandusky. And our Haunted Sandusky tour is a tour that we run throughout the month with the focus on the Sandusky and the Halloween activities, especially on the upcoming Halloween. There's going to be a real focus on Halloween activities in the Sandusky area. And so our Haunted Sandusky tour is going to be a part of it. Now, one of the things that I want to tell our listeners is that it's not people. We've had people say, "Oh, those things freak me out." It's not going to be a scary type of tour. It is not a scary type of tour.
Yeah.
What it is it's about. We have a tour guide who is a medium. She has lived in Sandusky her entire life. She was involved, as a matter of fact, she began Witches Walk, which is another October, great event in Sandusky. And she talks about her experience with the spirit world in Sandusky. And so we visit many sites where she talks about interesting things that have happened in the Sandusky area. So Haunted Sandusky runs throughout October. And then in December, we start right after Thanksgiving, and we do our Holiday Lights tour. How much fun is that?
Yeah.
This is a tour where we spotlight not only the downtown decorations and talk about the history of the downtown decorations and the very, very first Christmas that was celebrated in Sandusky, but then we also go to some spectacular light shows at private residences. And we also then end up at Sawmill Creek for their Season of Joy, which, if our listeners have not participated in that, it's absolutely spectacular. And along the way, we have a lot of fun in the bus, talk about holiday trivia. We sing holiday songs, Christmas songs, and we have just a great time. And everybody's treated to hot chocolate, too. So that's...
Oh, nice. Dayton, did you hear
Yep,
that?
I'm
hot
there.
Chocolate.
I am there.
Dayton's a huge hot chocolate fan. I love the idea of the holiday Christmas lights tours, and I'm just sad that I haven't been able to do it yet. I'm going to make sure that I get it on my calendar this season because It reminds me of like when I was a little kid and my parents used to drive us around to look at the Christmas lights and I got to be in the back seat. Well, now I'm the parent, so I don't really get to enjoy. I'm more worried about traffic and, not running stop signs and things like that. So I'll let you guys do the driving and I'll just sip my hot chocolate.
We would be delighted to have you, absolutely. And one of the things that we're finding is that year after year, people are bringing their family back. And there are several families that, because of the size of the family, they rent the entire bus. So it works out really well for them as far as a family gathering. And it's something that the little ones, well, the big ones too, look forward to each year.
Let's talk a little bit about the pricing. So, do you have like standard pricing, or is it different based on which tour you're selecting?
Well, it is different, Jill. And the reason that it's different is because, as I said, the tours are all inclusive. So when you go on a wine tour, after you pay for the cost for the tour itself, there's no other costs associated with it. So you're not buying wine, you're not buying food, you're not tipping the staff at each of the wineries. The only additional charge or cost that you might have is if while you're at a winery you find a really favorite wine and you want to buy a bottle to take home, or two or three.
I do this quite often.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, we've made a place in the back of the bus to accommodate people who want to take wine home. So, of course, the cost of a wine tour, because of the wine and because of the food and because of all the other kinds of things associated with it, is going to be higher than, for example, a Holiday Lights tour, because there's not the additional cost associated with that.
Right, and that's the wine tour is like a 4-hour tour, where the Underground Railroad tour is more like an hour.
The Underground Railroad tour is actually a 2-hour tour.
2 hours, okay.
2-hour tour, yeah. And so the time and then the related cost. But all of the information is shown on our webpage. One of the things that I always assume that people know this, but it's worth stating, is that all of the tours are reserved seats. So you have to go to our website and reserve time or a seat on the tour. We don't have tours that are walk-on tours.
Okay.
So, for example, we're not stationed at Jackson Street Pier every day, and you can just walk up and get on the tour. And again, there's a good reason for that, is because if we have 10 or 15 people who are going on a wine tour, we always notify the winery before so that they have the sufficient amount of staff available, and so they can help in their planning. The times, the prices are all on our website, and you can see the full line of tours that we do. We've not discussed all of them, but there are a bunch of other tours that we do. And you're right, so the price is dependent on the focus of the tour as well as the time associated with it.
So if somebody is going to make a reservation for one of your tours, what do you recommend as far as a timeline? Like, how far out do you recommend people make those reservations in order to give you that time to plan?
Well, certainly if it's a large group, we like to know as early as possible. One of the things that we have done, again, in our booking system, which is on our website, is that we do need to have reservations at least 72 hours prior to the scheduled tour time. That's a couple days prior to the scheduled tour time. After that, the tour disappears. So let's say, for example, that you're wanting to do a tour on Friday and come in on Thursday, and you don't see the tour that you're looking for, the following day. And that's because the tour has dissolved or is transparent at that point. So as early as possible, but we do recommend at least 72 hours. Are there exceptions to that? Of course there are. The thing that I remember about that is New Year's Eve. We got a call on New Year's Eve morning from a family who wanted to do the Holiday Lights tour, and there were some problems as far as family members coming in, and they weren't sure they were going to be there, but everybody got there, and they called and said, is there a possibility that we can do it? And we said, absolutely, we'll be glad to help.
Fantastic.
So yeah, if you have a question, there's a number that you can call. We'll be glad to talk to you about it and see if there's an exception that we can make.
And when it comes to booking, can you mention that website for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. It's www.Firelands Adventure Tours, all one word, .com. And that will take you to our website. When you see the website, one of the things that you'll see is you'll see information about the tour scrolling on the website, and there's places where you can click to see a full description of each of the tours. At each of those descriptions, be a link that says Book Now. You click that Book Now, and then you'll see a calendar of the available tours for that particular topic, and you can make a selection, put the number of people who are going to be coming on your tour, the time, and then sends you a confirmation email to say that, yep, everything's looking great, and we're looking forward to seeing you.
Where does that tour normally depart from, most of your tours?
Most of the tours depart from the Jackson Street Pier.
Okay.
Now, there are some exceptions, such as the solar eclipse tour,
Right,
which
yeah,
is
I
going to
mentioned.
be at a different location. But if there is a different location, it would be in the confirmation email that you receive. But for most of the tours, they depart from the Jackson Street Pier.
So I am going to put you on the spot, but I feel like you're going to have the answer to this question. You've mentioned several times. Well, you were just talking about the tours in the Firelands area, and it's in your URL. It's the name of your business, Firelands
Right.
Adventure Tours. For people that don't know, what is the Firelands, and where does that name come from?
It's a great question, and we cover that every time we have a tour. And Jill, I have to tell you, there are people who were born and grew up in Sandusky, and after I say this, they said, I had no idea.
never knew that.
I never knew that. So we start the discussion by saying about Firelands. There's so many things that you see Firelands in this area. Firelands Regional Medical Center, Firelands Dental Clinic, Firelands Exempted
Credit
School
Union.
Districts, Firelands Credit Union, all of these things, and so. The history of the Firelands actually starts back in the Revolutionary War. It was the approach that the British troops used in their warfare to burn everything to the ground. I mean, they burned houses, churches, businesses, barns, everything. And I mean, this was a real hardship for people who had their livelihood destroyed by fire. As I say, back then, couldn't pick up your phone, call your insurance agent and say, hey, what do I do? Or go to Menards and start, making plans to do reconstruction. They had to go out into the forest and fell trees and make lumber and start all over. Well, after the Revolutionary War, the United States government recognized the hardship that these people had gone through. And so what they did was they made available a large section of land in what was then called the Western Reserve of Connecticut. And the Western Reserve of Connecticut was between the 41st and 42nd parallel, and they encouraged people to move west, and they made this land free to these people. Now, the interesting thing is that the 41st and the 42nd parallel of the Western Reserve is exactly where we are here in Sandusky. So if we were in Revolutionary War times, we would be in Connecticut. We would not be in Ohio. and so at first, people were somewhat reluctant to move all the way out west. I mean, where's the ocean? They were used
Right.
to the
They
ocean,
didn't know.
and they had no clue. But there were a few brave souls who made the trek and made their way out into the Connecticut Western Reserve. And these people were labeled the fire sufferers. But the people made their way out, and they were astonished at what they found. They found very rich, fertile land for their crops.
Beautiful Lake Erie.
Beautiful Lake Erie, fishing, absolutely. And they put down roots here, and they got word back to family and friends on the East Coast that, hey, this is a great place. You should come out and you should settle out here. We're doing really, really well. And so the people started to think that we're really not suffering. We're really not fire sufferers. So at that point, a decision was kind of made by the population in this area to change from fire sufferers to the Firelands. And that name has stuck ever since.
Yeah. I knew you'd know.
Yeah, it had its history. It had its history as a result of the Revolutionary War and the brave souls who came out. And and it has had such an effect on just the culture of the area. We talk a lot about that as it relates to the Underground Railroad tour and those people moving from the East Coast, bringing the culture with them. And another interesting thing that was a result of that is they named their cities here after the cities that they were familiar with in Connecticut. So, on the East Coast. So we have Norwalk, Ohio, we have Norwalk, Connecticut, we have Greenwich, Ohio, and Greenwich, Connecticut, we have New Haven, and all of the cities that are in and around. So they brought not only their culture but also the names of the cities, which I think is kind of interesting and something that we don't realize all the time.
And very, very cool. I knew you would have the answer. So I appreciate the little history lesson. And people, of course, can learn more when they partake in the Firelands Adventure Tours. One more time, Dick, give us that website.
Yeah, it's www.firelandsadventuretours, and that's all one word, .com.
Perfect. Folks, you can also learn more about Dick and Jim on our Lake Erie Love blog. If you go to shoresandislands.com and click on the blog tab at the top, you can select Like a Local from the drop-down menu, and there you'll find a bunch of interviews that we've done with local business owners, including Dick and Jim. So special thanks to Dick Ries from Firelands Adventure Tours for joining us today, and thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to like and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, so that you don't miss a minute of the action here in Shores and Islands, Ohio. You can find more information, including past episodes of this podcast, online at shoresandislands.com. And we'll see you next time on the Shoreline.